A recent study shows the UK is lagging behind the US when it comes to the amount of support given to ideas and potential startups. And Daphne Leprince-Ringuet is here with us now for ZDNet to talk about this. And Daphne, just start first with the research and what you've discovered here.
Yeah, so a good place to start actually in answering that question is looking at an American university. So MIT, for example, is where 26,000 active companies originated. The annual turnaround of all these active companies together is about $2 trillion per year. And to give you an idea, if we were to create a country only constituted by those firms that were created by former MIT graduates, it would be the 17th richest country in the world. So obviously that's something that's very hard to compete against. But researchers have been sort of looking at how British universities are faring comparatively. And what they found was that they are lagging behind here in the UK. So to do that, they looked at three things. They looked at the amount of intellectual property created. They looked at the number of companies that are successfully spinned out of a university. And they looked also at how much revenue is generated from exiting those companies. And as I said, they found out that British universities are perhaps a bit less entrepreneur-minded and a bit less successful at commercializing the ideas that are born in their labs. And the reason for that is that basically researchers are not entrepreneurs. And in the UK, they get less financial support and they get less support in the form of advice to turn what originates in the lab as an idea and to turn that into a successful startup. So a striking example of that is, for example, in Oxford, where Oxford University teamed up with an organization called Oxford Sciences Innovations in 2015. So they did that to provide more capital and to provide more advice to their researchers in the lab to turn those ideas into successful companies. That was in 2015. And if we look at the numbers before 2015, since 2010, the number of companies that had come out of Oxford's labs was stagnating around 5 a year. After the partnership, after 2015, this number really jumped, and in 2018, 20 companies were spinned out of Oxford labs. So that is still dwarfed by, a university like MIT, but it does show that there is not only a skills gap, but also a financial support gap that needs to be filled, and that can be filled quite easily by universities if they provide the right support in the form of finance and in the form of advice to their researchers and to their graduates, so that they can successfully then turn those ideas into successful companies, and then the university can then exit this company to create more revenue that they can put in the form of a fund for new ideas. So it's sort of a virtuous cycle that they can reach quite easily if they put in the adequate support.
And so, in Daphne, obviously a lot goes into turning ideas and startups into companies and living, breathing companies that can really be successful. So, you mentioned some of the things that can be done there, but really any more the advice that was given or suggestions made in the article of how to change course here?
Yeah, so there is another argument that goes even deeper into into this sort of perspective. The argument is that there is actually a deeper disconnect between academia and industry. So academia is perhaps not focused, it's not flexible enough to meet the demands of industry, and there should be a closer partnership between private industry and universities that are usually publicly funded. So for example, there is a man called Konstantin Novoselov. He is a Nobel Prize winner. He discovered graphene and won the Nobel Prize in physics for that. And it is his perspective that there is not enough partnership between industry and university. And that's the reason that so many ideas are born in the lab and don't become successful startups. So he believes that if industry from the start said what they needed, what sort of innovation they need, then that would not only ensure that the ideas are then commercialized, but it would also mean that industry would be able to privately fund this research specifically so that it can then meet their needs. So that's one perspective, but it's also obviously very important to remember that blue sky research is equally important. It's also where a lot of groundbreaking innovations have come from, like antibiotics or penicillin, and that is not the kind of research that private companies can commission, because it's a sort of innovation that comes from pure academic research. It requires imagination and deep expertise in a specific field to then be developed. It's the sort of inventions that respond to problems that we didn't even know we could sort, or that we didn't even know existed. So there needs to be a balance, and there needs to be a bit of both. But in the meantime, we do know that there are a lot of good commercial ideas that are stuck in labs in the UK, and that there are quite easy ways of making sure that there is closer cooperation with industry and with private companies to make sure that they develop into successful companies and successful startups. That's a place to start.
Excellent. All right. Well, definitely a lot of great ideas out there. It just takes a whole lot of support to get things off the ground. Daphne, we appreciate your article on this. And for more on that research, you can find it on ZDNet. Thanks for watching.